Hey everybody, Kyle Goth here from GoatFilmReviews.com and the Goat Film Reviews YouTube channel, and I have my first thoughts, my first reaction to the Andrew Dominik film Blonde. This movie dropped a couple months ago, but to be honest, as excited as I was before this film came out, I lost a lot of that excitement the more I'd spoken to people who just did not connect with that material at all. So I just kind of put off watching it. I didn't have a need to, but now it's been nominated for Oscars. I wanted to check it out. I knew I was going to see it eventually, but I finally have seen it. And maybe it was me going into it assuming the worst. I'm not going to say I liked the movie, no, but I thought the movie was okay. You know, I would kind of put it on the level of Tar, maybe a little bit higher than Tar for me, because Tar was a movie that I thought the central character and performance were fantastic. I just didn't care as much for the movie around them. I can respect what's being done, but it just didn't translate for me. So that's kind of how Blonde was as well. Let me start by saying the things I liked about the film. First of all, as I said, performance-wise, I loved Ana de Armas as Norma Jean / Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, you know, I heard some complaints about her accent coming through. I don't worry as much about accent, unless the accent is so like removes me from the film, and it didn't really bother me, any accent stuff. I thought her performance, though, there was times when I felt she disappeared into the role, i.e. there was times when they had footage showing on like television or movie screens, and I couldn't actually tell you if it was the real footage or like the real footage of Marilyn Monroe or the film footage that they shot for this movie. That's how good I think her performance was. I also really liked Adrian Brody as the playwright, aka Arthur Miller. There was a couple other performances peppered throughout, but those were the two that really shined for me. I also will say this, as much as Andrew Dominik's direction in this film, for the most part, was quite daring, quite experimental, and some of it really worked. Now, granted, there's some of it that really does not work. This film has gotten criticized for basically being a nearly 3-hour-long movie where you watch Norma Jean / Marilyn Monroe get abused physically, sexually, emotionally, and mentally. That's not incorrect. I did think some of his direction, some of his cinematography, his work with the DP was really, really great at times. But again, there's certain moments, and one in particular I'll call out. There is a moment where Norma Jean's character is literally blowing the president. And I felt like the camera choices there were a little too sadistic. Because I looking at some of the stuff that Andrew Dominik was going for with this film, I understood what he wanted to accomplish. And bear in mind, this is based on a fictionalized novel from Joyce Carol Oates. So you go into it knowing that he's going to try and take that novel as the Bible for his film and mix in some true life events to kind of really flesh out Marilyn Monroe. Knowing he's going for that, and I've not read the novel, so I can't really speak to it, I can see that his intention is to showcase the tragedy of Norma Jean Marilyn Monroe. The fact that all she wanted in life was family, was people that were going to support her and lift her up, and she just couldn't get that. That there was men that only saw her for her looks as a tool to be used, and that there was women who judged her for those looks and saw her as a whore, a tramp. I saw her as all these other things. It's a tragic story. I can see he's going for that. I don't think he is successful at that. And the biggest problem with it is the screenplay. He adapted the novel himself. The screenplay seems to jump around in time a little too frequently, where we never really get our bearings in one time period. It may have been a smarter choice to focus on a portion of the novel, or to just literally give us more story. Because we'll have one of her marriages where she marries a guy. It goes south, but we never really see the end of the marriage. It just jumps forward in time till she's single again. And then she gets married to someone else, and we see the degradation of that relationship. And then we jump forward in time to when she's single. It's like we're not telling her story at this point. We're just picking and choosing scenes that objectify her, and that's the frustrating thing about it. Again, I went into this movie thinking it was going to be awful. And I was very surprised by Ana de Armas' performance, Adrian Brody's performance, and I was surprised at the technical level of artistry from the directing standpoint, from the cinematography, from the hair and makeup and costume design, which was great. There are things in this movie that are fantastic. I just don't think this story is successful at accomplishing what Andrew Dominik wanted to do. He inadvertently made a film that objectified her in the same way that he was making a film about the tragedy of people objectifying her. And in some ways that could work. But whatever he was working with here did not breach that, did not fully accomplish what that task was. Because for the most part in her life, we're jumping from scene to scene of truly depressing material. And that's not to say that the film can't be depressing, but it doesn't have an emotional through line because it's just depressing. We never have any joy, and I have to assume that Marilyn Monroe's life had some joy in it. Peppered throughout, there has to be that emotional journey that we're going on. And instead we have 3 hours of just absolute misery. And in some cases really well-made misery. But it doesn't stand together as a film that I'm excited to go back to. And that's frustrating because if you had asked me in September, you know, what prestige films are you really excited for this year, I would have to assume Blonde would have made the list of like the top films I'm excited for come Oscar season. And as it stands, the movie is just okay. And there will be people that will like it, there will be people that hate it. A lot of people hate it. But I thought it was okay. I really wanted to like this movie more. Like, I would have been a target audience for this because I've always been fascinated by the story of Marilyn Monroe. And not knowing a ton about it, so let me be clear there, but I've always been fascinated by her story. And so I think as a biopic, this is a movie that really could have brought me in. And outside of the central performances and the cinematography and the great makeup and hair, the story itself, not her story, but the story Andrew Dominik decided to tell with this material, did not work for me. So that's kind of the frustrating thing about it, is that so much of it just needed to overcome that hurdle, which is a big hurdle, and it didn't do that for me. So once you see Blonde, I want you to come on back and tell me what you thought about Andrew Dominik's most recent film. Maybe tell me your favorite film of his. I know a lot of people talk about the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. I've never seen another film of his, so I would love to hear your thoughts on what your favorite film of his is. And maybe what biopic you'd like to see in the future. There's a lot of people, we tend to go music biopics, but there's a lot of people in history that would have very interesting stories that are definitely worth checking out. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and while you're down there, please like and subscribe. They're 2 free things. They don't cost you a dime, but they support my channel, and they make sure you never miss 2 episodes of the show as they drop, and I do appreciate that. You can check out the links down below for all these other great things, but you can find Go Film Reviews on Facebook. You can find GoFilmReviews.com for my written reviews. You can find me personally at Almighty Goatman on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, and you can find my show Kyle and Nick on Film that I co-host with Nick Plodchuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. We have new episodes every single week. Yeah, join me down there, and I'd love to see you.